Hello, welcome to Openly Spoken, the podcast to help you show up, speak out, and be seen. My name is Celia. I'm your host today, and I am joined by a guest named Laura Isabella Machny, and we are talking about the overarching theme of our conversation today is where joy is hidden and where you can find it. So we talk about prioritizing pleasure. We talk about embracing the full spectrum of emotion. We talk about embracing your multifacetedness and not putting yourself into a box, not into a box of boss babe, not into a box of being this soft and docile, not into any box, embracing the full spectrum of all your sides. We also talk about embracing your own timeline, balancing inner feminine and masculine energy, and so many more juicy things. This is another one of those episodes that we started mid-conversation. So we started out talking about the metaverse, and it just kind of like naturally flows, and it really was just like a real conversation as if we were sitting in my living room together, which is where I'm recording this intro from. And yeah, before we get into it, let me introduce you to Laura Isabella.
Laura is a spiritual life coach, Tantra teacher, Reiki energy healer, and joy goddess. And she is here to help spiritually awakened women step into their own innate power, self-love, and pleasure so that they can gain momentum and achieve what they want in love and in life. Laura's bigger mission is to help create a more conscious, joyful, and loving world through personal growth, spiritual awakening, and self-improvement. And one more thing before we dive in. If it's not your first time here and you've already enjoyed content from this channel before, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. It helps the podcast get out to more people. And if it is your first time here and you like this episode, share it with a friend, spread the word, and that would really mean so much to me.
I think it's really important, more than ever, to really, truly be with yourself, self-reflect, do some self-inquiry, ask yourself some bigger questions. Ask yourself, like, how do I really want to be? How do I want to show up? Like, who am I truly? And can I really love myself here? And, and if I don't, then what's the reason, and then explore that really deeply. I mean, this is the journey of like self-discovery, spiritual awakening, inner growth, and then say no to everything that's not in alignment with you.
I love that. That's a really good one. Good for grounding. I'm recording already.
Perfect. We entered the time portal, baby, where it just time is illusory, it doesn't exist.
Welcome to Openly Spoken, the podcast to help you show up, speak out, and be seen. Here you'll get to eavesdrop on connected women's conversations about self-love, confidence, healing, relationships, creativity, and more. I'm your host, Celia Antonio, and I am your guide to getting you grounded into your body, feeling your full spectrum of emotion, and expanding your fullest self-expression. I also pop in here from time to time with solo episodes where I give you tips, tricks, and resources like meditations, visualizations, and all the things to get you grounded, to get you to feel, to get you to alchemize, and to get you to expand and express yourself fully. I'm so grateful that you're here, and I invite you to now put your hands on your heart, take a deep breath, set a tone for how you want to be as you show up for this podcast, take what resonates in this podcast, leave out what doesn't resonate, and take some time to reflect and to contemplate. And if there's anything in the podcast you want to chat about, you can always reach out to me on Instagram at selfexpressbabe. Thank you so much for being here. Now let's get started. Yeah, so we were just talking about how like technology moves quickly. I feel the same like with the whole metaverse thing. I'm like, why would we do that? Why would we have, like, we're already zombied out on our phones. Like, why do we need these things to just block out all of reality? No, thank you.
I know, I totally agree with you. When I first saw that, I was kind of horrified and kind of shocked. Like, I can understand like some of the positives that might be available through that, but honestly, I was like, no, this cannot be that good. We're already way too absorbed in the alternative world of the online stuff, social media, all of that reality. And it's like, we just need to be more present where we are and cultivate the relationships that we have like in person as well. I mean, obviously this is beautiful that we can do this right now, right? Like,
Yeah,
yay,
that's true.
technology is great.
Yeah.
So this, like communicating, all over the world, different time zones. However, people are feeling so much more isolated and so much more lonely simultaneously, and people don't know how to relate or communicate anymore. There's so many issues there, especially as well, I think with youth, like younger people that, yeah, I mean, and I mean, that's like a whole thing. You could just like, we could do a whole call on that alone. But yeah, it's crazy. And I think that's why I have like a resistance a bit towards new technological things that come out. Like we're always being like bombarded by them, like try this, do this, do this. And then I feel like my energy is going in too many different directions, and then I can't focus,
Yeah, it's
you
very
know? So
overwhelming.
it's
Yeah.
overwhelming.
I always get
Yeah.
overwhelmed with like how many different places people can message me.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Like I have Instagram, Facebook, email, like all these things, and I'm like, ah.
Oh,
And
yeah,
then I
it's so
don't
true.
answer messages for like weeks.
Right. Yeah, because it's too much. Absolutely. I totally agree. I started out with, what did I have? Like Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp, I think, in the beginning. And now there's
Mm-hmm.
Telegram and Slack and like all these other ones. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, absolutely. And there's just going to be more, I feel. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, yeah, it's really intense. So it's always like finding a balance for me of, I have these days, I call them disconnection days to reconnect, which is where I like
Oh,
go really
nice.
offline, like full on. I'm like, nope, no internet, no messages, no screens, nothing. Just put it
Mm-hmm.
down. And it's not that hard for me. Like, yes, I'm very plugged in, but at the same time, I know how good it feels. And I know how good it is for me. So, I
Mm-hmm.
can put that down and it feels so good. It's just an entire day of, usually what I do is I spend time in nature because I love nature and, directly being in it. So going to the beach, going to the forest, and just really immersing myself and not needing to look at a screen. And what I might do sometimes is still take some pictures just because I love
Yeah.
photography. It's very an artistic expression for me as well. So I will use it for that. But then, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's really nourishing. It feels really good. I definitely recommend it
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love how that goes hand in hand with like honestly all the like things that you listed as like things we can talk about. Like first off, prioritizing pleasure. Like we need a
Yes.
step back from technology to feel good. Like technology,
Mm-hmm.
let's be honest, doesn't really make us feel good.
No,
I
it
mean,
doesn't.
sometimes I can see how it does if like you live in an area where like nobody is like you and maybe like no
Yeah.
one has the same beliefs as you
Yeah.
and you feel alone, then yeah, you can find your community
Mm.
on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know that that's helpful, but I think
Yes.
that might be the only exception.
Yeah, pretty much. Because I feel like there's so much comparison that goes on, and then you feel like you're
Yeah.
not good enough or you're supposed to be a certain way and you forget to be yourself. Or,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like you can go down so many different rabbit holes, I feel. And I was still somebody, and I think you can probably relate to this. Like, I grew up in a time where cell phones had only just kind of started, like, barely,
Mm-hmm.
not even. I mean, when I was a kid, there was no cell phones.
Yeah.
We had landlines. It was cool. And I grew up, I mean, playing outside, just running around, using my
Yeah.
imagination, like building things out of sticks.
Yeah. I
And
used
it
to
was
play with mud and
awesome.
it was so fun.
Fun. So
And
fun.
rocks.
Oh, yes. Seriously, like just the little things, and we often take them for
Mm-hmm.
granted nowadays or we don't even realize. But actually just the other day I was out on the beach and I was I was sitting there enjoying the sun and there were some families around and I noticed the children playing and there was this little girl very close to me. She was in that kind of place by the ocean where the water gets to your feet, but there,
Mm-hmm.
like it just hits you, but you have like time where it's not there. And
Mm-hmm.
she had buried her feet into the sand and she was just constantly taking the sand and like continuing to bury her feet and then the water would come and wash it away and then she would continue to bury her feet. She was doing this for, I don't know, at least the whole time I was there, which was a good half hour. And
Mm-hmm.
she loved it. She was really enjoying it. And it was so beautiful just to witness that and to know because I can relate, right? Because I was that child. So I can relate to how she was feeling and enjoying it and appreciating that. And I thought that was so beautiful, and that exists so naturally within children. However, at the same time, I see so many kids, you know, you see them walking around or something and they're on these screens, or you see parents just like in a restaurant giving their 2-year-old a screen to just like watch the whole, it's scary. It's really scary. It's like, how are they developing, you know, or how are they not developing? Like, I'm not an expert in those things, but it's really scary, like, to think about it. Like, what kind of world are we creating? Because they literally are the future.
Yeah, it is scary. I used to be a waitress in New York City, and I saw that a lot, like babies just like on the iPad, just like zonked out. And like, I get that that keeps the child quiet, but like there are other things you can do to keep a child quiet. And I used to work with kids, and from what I've noticed, I'm no expert on this at all, but from what I've noticed, like the kids that are on screens or on games a lot, like they're not developing their social skills.
Right.
And I think that's dangerous. And then we have this metaverse that's like, you know, that like kids are going to be even more like, what scares me the most about it is the disembodiment of it, because you're not in reality anymore.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's
And
terrifying.
then you might start questioning, you know, like, and then,
Is my body real?
Yes. And you're like, this is gonna, you know, everyone's gonna be different in regards to how much they get into it, obviously. But are they going to like want to prefer to be in that reality? I think some people will. And I think that in itself has a whole bunch of implications, right? That can't be healthy on multiple
we already
levels.
see that with phones, like,
right. That's a good point. Yeah, it already largely exists. So that's really crazy. And I feel like embodiment is so important. It's so important. You
it's
know,
so important. Yeah,
we have
for
a
sure.
body. We live and feel through our bodies, and largely we're so much in our minds all the time. And you know, like take out technology and social media and all that for a second. Just even without that, we're always so much in our heads, overthinking. I mean, we live in a society that prioritizes that, that encourages that, right? It's like you got to think through it. You got to be logical and like figure it all out, like think about it, right? And we forget that our thoughts and our ability to think and our mind is actually just, it's a tool, which is very useful and it's awesome and it's part of us and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. However, the problem is when we identify with that solely as like the only thing that we are and the only way to live. And when we have that perspective or that lens that we're looking through, we're missing out on a huge part of who we are and what we're capable of and what we can feel. Feelings in general, which are ignored a lot of the times, which are of course incredibly important to not ignore. So it's an interesting time in the world right now, and I also feel like, you know, conscious parenting is so important. Like, raise your children, you know, consciously with awareness, you know, empower them right from the start, let them know who they are, encourage who they are naturally, love them unconditionally, and don't have them sit on screens for too long, too often. Really don't do that. I mean, that's what I would say. That's what I would do as a mother. You know, I'm not a mother right now, but that is definitely what I would be doing with my children.
Because like what you said with how embodiment is so important, I think embodiment and that connection with your body is necessary to know who you are and to be confident and to be expressed and to, you know, we're expected, I don't know how it is where you live, but over here we're expected to like choose what we want to do for the rest of our lives at like 17, 16, 18. And like not everyone at that age knows who they are, especially in a society where we put thinking ahead of feeling. And embodiment isn't seen as important.
No, absolutely. I agree with you. And I mean, that's exactly how I grew up as well. Like, I'm from Canada originally. Currently, I'm living in Chile. I think it's very similar here. They're also like very like much, you know, that Western kind of attitude towards life here. It's very much about that. And when it was exactly like that for me. I remember specifically when I think it was in grade 10 in high school. I was about 15 years old. And it was like family planning class or something like that, or no, even more than that. It was some sort of like life planning class. And the the assignment was that, okay, like write down the next 5 years of your life and the next 5 after that. So approximately 10 years, give or take. Like, what is it that you want to do? In what order? And I just thought it was the most ridiculous assignment because I was like, I have no idea. I am just trying to like figure out how I feel about stuff because I'm a teenager and I have all these hormones, and I don't know. I'm like discovering life right now. I'm really young.
Yeah.
I have no idea what my life is going to look like. Like I want to be happy. That's what I want. I don't know exactly what road that is going to take for me, what path I'll go on. But I was always very much in touch with my intuition in that sense, that I didn't let the things that society was telling me to do dictate how I was living. So in that way, I was always really rebellious, like a bit of a rebel, or like, I did things differently. And my life has really shaped itself, in that regard. But yeah, teenagers generally don't know, usually. There's a few people that are very set, like, yes, this is what I want to do. I want to be a veterinarian, or I want to be this and this, and they follow
And
that.
I think
That's great,
I think those people are a good reflection of their parents, in my opinion,
yeah.
or at least their environment, because
right.
I don't think you can have that knowledge of knowing who you are without it being mirrored to you, because there's so much you don't know at that age. Like me, I was very like sheltered and very helicoptered. So there's a lot of things that I found out about really late.
Yeah.
And like if I was a teenager now, I would have totally went in a different direction in college. Like I would have went the science route instead of the art route, because the art was like my self-therapy to like deal with life.
Yeah.
And I just recently realized, like, oh, whoa, art isn't like my purpose or passion. It was just my therapy.
Right. Yeah. And that's so beautiful when you can come to these realizations about yourself as well and about your life, like when you have like aha moments too, like whether it's instant or it takes some time, but everybody is on their own timeline. And the problem in school, in the majority of the schooling systems worldwide, as far as I can tell, we sweep everyone under the same rug and evaluate everyone the same way. And we look at intelligence just in one way, largely, right? These things are starting to change a bit, but that's still how it is largely. And it's sad because it's like the creativity and the natural way of that specific person is just kind of being numbed or suppressed largely. And then you lose yourself, right? Before you even really know yourself, you're losing yourself.
Yeah, I have chills all over my body as you say this.
Yeah, and then you have to spend all these years essentially like kind of finding yourself again, which in itself it can be very difficult and painful, this journey, but it's also really beautiful, and
yeah, for sure.
And I definitely am a big believer in that life is happening for us, right? And that, things are kind of meant to be. So I'm not judging it in that sense as something bad. I just think that it can be really difficult and a little bit unnecessary, like it would be much better for children to be told, okay, like, this is all available to you. Like, how do you feel about this? Like, take some time with trying out these different things, And then I feel like it would be easier for the child and for the person, for the young adult, to figure things out, right? And to be encouraged and not feel like they have to live up to an expectation or that they have to suppress a part of themselves, because I think that's a big part of it, is like we're constantly suppressing parts of ourselves to live up to an expectation, or thinking we have to do it this way because that's the way you're supposed to, and this is how you can be happy, but that doesn't really feel right. And it's a lot. It's messy.
Yeah.
Definitely messy.
That is. And I could definitely see us taking the route of like, talking more about like, the childhood and, there's so many different ways to educate kids now. There's like unschooling, but I really want to see if we can venture to the topic of like prioritizing pleasure. Cause one thing that you said was suppressing a part of ourselves. And, I've recently come to realize, maybe like a year ago, that pleasure, and first of all, pleasure isn't just sexuality.
Thank you for saying that.
But maybe and is the right word. And sexuality is, though, something that is a part of us that is largely suppressed.
Yeah.
And I think that can be linked to why we suppress pleasure or maybe feel
Yeah.
guilty when we're having a good day while we know
Yeah.
people on the other side of the world are starving.
Mm.
But with sexuality, it's like, it's this part of being human
Yeah.
that's taken from us.
Yep.
And it's been going on for generations. This is why most of us listening, and I'm sure I relate to this. I'm sure you probably can too, but there are people who don't. There are people who have parents who do talk to them, but most parents do not talk to their kids about sex at all, because it's just, they've been conditioned to feel so uncomfortable about it that they'll just avoid it. But this is a part of ourselves that we're suppressing.
Yeah.
So then we have all these, I feel like I'm going on, like I'm on a soapbox right now.
It's awesome. I love it.
And then we have all these like shows and advertisements and all these things that are very sexualized.
Yeah.
And they do so well because like that part of us is starving.
Yeah.
Like the first thing that comes to mind is Bridgerton. I loved that show. The first season was good. I didn't really like, the second season was good too, but the first one, that was a hot season.
Oh my God. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, totally. I really resonate with everything you just said. I'm incredibly passionate about pleasure. And also the understanding of like what that all means, right? Because it's not just about sex. And like so many people, I think they gravitate towards that. They think that is what it is about, right? Like just sex.
Yeah.
And of course, sex and sexual energy is so beautiful and so natural and so important. And there is a lot of pleasure in that. And that is a big part of pleasure. And absolutely, like, let's embrace that more. Let's be more open about that, right? And pleasure is not just about sex. So, like I enjoy a cup of chai tea and some dark chocolate, and
That's what I'm drinking.
I feel so much pleasure in that, like just really tasting it fully. And of course, you can increase your pleasure by being more present, by tasting it fully rather than just like, swallowing really quickly, the chocolate that is.
Yeah.
So pleasure is so important. It's so important because it means that you're prioritizing yourself in a way that feels good, right? Like all the time we are prioritizing the to-do list, the go, the errands, the what do I need to do next, right? And we forget about pleasure completely. Like some people are now starting to rest more, right? That's a big thing now. Like rest is, and absolutely, definitely rest more. We need more rest. That's also really important. But what about pleasure? It's like nobody's talking enough about that, in my opinion. You need to be able to take time for yourself, guilt-free, ideally. We have this saying, it's like guilty pleasure, like, ooh.
Yeah.
Why? Who, tagged pleasure with guilt? Like, I think it also, just because of the sexual energy part of it, I feel like because we've shamed sex for so long, it's been so taboo, especially for women, that's why I think that the guilt comes into it, because sexual energy is somehow not okay. It's like we can openly have, this is a good example, we can have all these movies with like war scenes, people killing each other, violence and everything, right? And that's like kind of normal. It's been normalized. And then we have these sex scenes or kissing and everybody's like, ooh. Like
cover your eyes.
Like don't look. Exactly, like look away. But at the same time, you have this booming porn industry, right? And you've got people that are craving to be able to feel themselves in their sexual energy that isn't shamed, that's okay, that's acceptable. And they're just like what you were saying, there just isn't conversation around it.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very complex issue that literally spans like a long time, hundreds, thousands of years, of like the oppression of this energy. And I think part of it is there's a lot of power in it. There's a lot of power in sexual energy because sexual energy is the same as creative energy, as life force energy. It's that which creates, you literally create a human being with your sexual energy. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like when women in particular are in their sexual energy, they become so magnetic, like they they are in their power, they're in their flow. It's combined with that feminine energy, the creative energy, the sexual energy, all essentially being one. And when you're in that, you're more confident. You express yourself unapologetically. That's very self-loving. And that can be really scary as well to certain people, to an establishment, to a narrative, to, when they're trying to control something. It's hard to control people that are really in their power, right?
Yeah, it is.
So you want to suppress it, essentially, put a lid on it. And now I think we're at a time where we're getting more in touch with ourselves, quite literally. Like we're exploring our bodies. We are having more open conversations about it, like how we are now. More recognition around ourselves as a full person, as a whole being that has all these different aspects and qualities and feelings and desires. How we can kind of change the narrative around it, that actually you don't need to feel shame or guilt around it, and I think it's still going to take some time for us to really unpack all this, both on an individual level for each person, because everyone's unique, and as a collective, because for so long we've been so suppressed and oppressed in different ways, right? So it's not like we can just change everything tomorrow in regards to this. And there's, many different things that people can do on their personal journeys. But I think, like, I don't want to get too much back into the children's thing, but it does start there, speak to your children about sexual energy, like be open about it, and don't shame your child, for feeling something or for touching or for any, just encourage their exploration and tell them who they are and what everything is about. And pleasure is just as important as rest. Like both are really important. And I think something that would be really good to do for everybody, I've said this before, is write a pleasure first list. Rather than, just having your to-do list, also write a pleasure list, a pleasure first list. See what it is that you like, anything, big, small, like I said, eat some chocolate if that's your thing, have a bath, dance, go walk on the beach, like whatever it is for you, read a good book, prioritize it, make it a priority. And then the things on your to-do list are going to become more fun because you've done something on your pleasure list, right? You're going to feel better. You're going to be more in your body. You're going to be giving yourself more love and more care. And then you can, essentially from the inside out, you're going to transform your life, a bit by bit, day by day, because when you feel better, because everything is, emotions, energy and motion, where you focus your awareness and your attention, you create more of all of this, right? So you're going to end up feeling better, and you can invite more joy in. I talk a lot about joy as well. You can invite more joy into your experience, even in hard times. And that doesn't mean that you're bypassing anything. I want to be really clear on that, because I do speak a lot about joy and pleasure, because that's my energy is very much like joyful and very positive and all this. But I'm not bypassing. I still feel my sadness. I still feel my frustration and my anger. And because I allow myself to feel the whole spectrum of emotions when they're there, I can more easily then release them. And when I can do that, I can invite more joy in. I can feel more fulfilled and more happy. Even if there's something difficult going on in my life, I can deal with it in a way that feels better ultimately. And everybody is actually capable of doing that, like to invite more joy into your life. And that has to do with inviting more pleasure into your life as well, and just allowing yourself to feel everything, because we don't do that. We numb and we suppress our feelings in a multitude of different ways. And that ultimately is so detrimental, I find.
Yeah. I think that might be one of the biggest ways that human society is keeping themselves small, because we're so afraid of feeling, our sadness, our anger, our anxiety, our depression.
Yeah.
And like in not feeling that, or in stuffing that down, then that also cuts us off from the, quote, good. I don't like to label emotions as good or bad. I think they're all, here for a purpose.
Yeah, I agree.
But there's definitely like this fear, and I get it. I used to be one of those people, but it's amazing how if you make the space for it,
Mm,
and you like, I'm gonna use the word like integrate, like if you integrate those parts of you and like give those parts of you love, like the
mm,
side of me that gets sad, like let me shower her with love, let me hold her for a second, let me welcome her back into my heart, like that's going to shift something. But we're
yeah.
not taught, like going back again to childhood, like this
Yeah.
needs to be taught to children,
Yeah.
because
Yeah, absolutely.
that's like a child, in my opinion, should be guided on how to navigate this human experience.
Yeah.
You know, but
Yeah,
instead
totally.
I feel like modern school is just like training them all to be workers, and that's
Yeah.
the issue.
It's like the industrial system, like when we're
Yeah.
like, essentially that's when like the modern schooling, I think, kind of started.
Yeah,
It's like that
I
time.
think that's what school, like the whole
Yeah.
purpose is to like train you to be a factory worker, but like
Yeah,
we don't
exactly.
really have like factories here anymore. Like
No.
what are we doing?
Yeah. It's so outdated. It is so
Yeah.
outdated. And yeah, and they just like set aside the very important part of emotions and the fact that everybody's so different, right?
Yeah.
And I felt that when I was in school, I was like, there is something wrong here. Like I
Mm.
actually had that feeling in school when I was a kid at a very young age already. I think I was probably around 10. And I was like, there's something missing to this. Something isn't right. Something's not
Mhm.
adding up. Like they're not teaching us everything, or some of the things they're teaching us aren't even accurate. And like I had this
Mhm.
whole, this was like before, obviously, I had my awakening where I realized a lot of things about the world myself. But yeah, it's just, I feel like it's failing a lot of people. It's
Yeah.
it's failing a lot of people. Like it's setting us up for something that's much more difficult than it needs to be, right?
Yeah.
And I think the
Yeah.
whole system needs to be like redone,
Mhm.
essentially, like recreated.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
totally.
think that'll happen once, like, not to get political here. I was gonna say, I feel like that'll happen once like newer generations are in government. I
Yeah,
don't know how it is in
yeah.
Chile or in
Mm-hmm.
Canada, but in
Yeah.
America, like we have like
Mm-hmm.
old, like no offense, but they're like from older generations.
Yeah,
And typically, like once you're a certain age, you're like not that open to new ideas.
it's true. Yeah.
And they're trying to keep the world how it was when they were
Yeah.
young. And
Yeah.
it's just not working.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I agree. And it's like that here, and it's like that in Canada. I think pretty much most of the world probably.
Hmm.
Absolutely, it's mostly older people. And you're right. I think we need, some young people to get
Yeah.
into
They
office.
need to like
Yeah,
stop and
definitely.
rest.
Yeah. It's like,
Which I
you know what
feel
it,
mean saying that, but
yeah, no,
like,
but I totally get it. It makes complete
yeah.
sense. And if I feel like it's kind of like the relationship with like grandparents,
Mm-hmm.
like I love
Mm-hmm.
like this is like what it like as soon as you said it, I saw this. Like I love my grandparents. But there was just some things that they would do and say where I was like, oh my God, did they just really
Yeah.
say that? And they think
Yeah.
it's totally okay.
I
Right? Like they
know.
think like to them it's like that's
Yeah.
their world. But for
I
us,
know.
it's like, whoa, like that is not really a thing anymore. That's not really acceptable
For
anymore,
sure. Yeah. Like in
I
my
feel like,
family, they think it's okay to be like, I don't mean to be racist, but and it's like if you're starting your sentence with that, what you're gonna say, you shouldn't be saying.
oh my God, exactly. It's just like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then sometimes, and like the thing too is you you feel like you can't really argue with them or really talk about it with them because they just that they're not really gonna get it the way that
Yeah.
you get it, right? It's like they're
Yeah.
in their world now, they're old now, and yeah, but I feel like a lot of
Yeah.
the politicians are like grandparents. Like,
That's a good way to explain it, that it's like, think
mm,
about your relationship with your grandparents. I've never thought
yeah,
about it like that.
yeah.
I do
Mm.
realize though that we started recording without having you like introduce yourself.
Oh, that's
Do
fine.
you want to do that now?
Sure, I will do that. Yes.
And then
So,
that can lead to, we'll see what it'll lead to.
yeah, for sure. So I'm Laura. I I am a Tantra teacher. I am a Reiki practitioner. I am a spiritual life coach and a joy goddess and just lover of life in general.
I love it.
Um, yeah. And at the moment, I'm very passionate about helping awakening wild women, like women that want to get back into their power, into their body, into their truth, just to really do that. And I guess this does lead into what I want to say next, to essentially be themselves in a really whole way. The fact that we're already whole, we're already complete, we're already enough, we're already worthy. You don't need to take on certain roles or identities and put yourself into the box of that or into the expectation of that, because that way you can often lose yourself. You can burn out. I'll give an example.
Yeah.
I find that a lot of women now, especially in the entrepreneurial space, they took on this like really intense identity of being the boss babe,
Oh
right?
God,
Like
yeah.
and myself included for a while,
Same.
right?
I used to be in a membership called Boss Babe.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah. It doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
So I feel like this boss babe attitude, of course, it comes from a well-intended place, right? Of course, it's like women doing their thing, being powerful, creating their own business, leading the way, like all good things, completely nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah.
However, the problem is that I have discovered within my own journey, my own personal life, within myself, and then also with what I've been seeing, is that becomes you. It's like you are that. It's like that's your identity. That's becomes your whole world. Next thing you know, you are in this like go, go, go energy all the time, right? You're like in this like intense masculine energy, essentially. Like it's always about doing, pushing, structure, getting the things done. And then you burn out. Like a lot of you burn out, you kind of fry your nerves and you lose your flow, your softness, your sensuality, your connection potentially to your sexual energy or your relationships. I mean, there are literally a cascading amount of things, that can happen as a result of you being so much in this way of being. And it suits some women to be like that most of the time fully. But that's a small percentage, I would say, because women are very, in particular, I mean, all people are, but I think women in particular, we're very cyclical. We're very rhythmic. We're very like up and down in these waves of our emotions, of our bodies. I mean, you can see it physically expressed in our menstrual cycle. I mean, so it's natural for us to want to slow down, for us to want to breathe, to connect with our bodies and our feelings. But when we're constantly in this pushing energy, there's no space for that.
Yeah.
And so, and then other parts of our life can suffer as a result. And, and you end up feeling really disconnected from your heart and from your yoni and from like who you are ultimately. So that's what I'm seeing. And then on the other side, you have like, there's the other side where it's like women are portrayed as or meant to be some sort of docile, helpless maiden.
Oh gosh.
Right?
Yeah.
Like so that's like the other side of it. But the truth is, in my opinion, is that we're both of those and so much more.
Yeah,
right?
we're so
And
multifaceted.
we're so multifaceted, and we can take on the identity of like, okay, right now I need to be the boss babe. Right? I need to step into those shoes. Like this is what needs to happen right now in my life in this moment. And now I can really relax. And now I can just be the sultry seductress. And now I can be so you can be all these people, but you don't have to choose to just really be one of them. It's like all this energy, all these archetypes, all of this is you because you are all of it. You're the woman, right? Like it's all within you. It's all available to you. And you can play the roles as much as you want, as long as you're being authentic and true to who you actually are, how you actually feel, how you want to show up in the world, right? How you want to live, unapologetically self-expressed, in touch with your truth. And that's different for everyone, and that can be hard to define, but it's there, it's within you. You can feel it, right? Getting in touch with your intuition, with your body. It comes back to embodiment. So I think it's really important more than ever, to really truly be with yourself, self-reflect, do some self-inquiry, ask yourself some bigger questions. Ask yourself, like, how do I really want to be? How do I want to show up? Like, who am I truly? And can I really love myself here? And, and if I don't, then what's what's the reason, and then explore that really deeply. I mean, this is the journey of like self-discovery, spiritual awakening, inner growth, and then say no to everything that's not in alignment with you.
Yeah. And
And
that
I
can
know
be
that
so hard.
I know, I was just about to say, I was like, I
Yeah.
know that can be incredibly difficult. And, and I'm over here, I'm the first person saying like, I can't do that all the time. And here's the thing, being okay with that too, accepting
Yeah.
yourself. This is what Tantra is literally all about. It's like
Yeah. Seeing
self-acceptance,
everything as like divine, right? Yeah.
seeing everything as divine and accepting yourself emotionally in every moment with
Yeah.
as little judgment as possible. And I know that's hard too, obviously, but being okay with that. And if you are judging yourself, then be okay with that. Like you can be okay with yourself and still have the intention to want to create changes and make changes in your life, right? Because we're always doing that. We're always growing and looking to grow, create change. And you're okay right here and now, simply because you exist, really. So yeah, like that's, and coming to this truth about ourselves, this wholeness, this deep understanding and this awareness, that's something I've been very passionate about, in my own life, and helping women, helping others as well to do so. Because otherwise we're feeling lost, we're flailing around, we're not fulfilled. I mean, you see it everywhere. Burned out boss babes everywhere.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
They're crispy.
So, yeah, exactly. Totally fried.
That should be a potato chip.
Yes. Oh, good. That
Turned
might
out
work
boss
really well.
babe.
Yeah. Yeah. Crispy boss babe. But yeah, it comes back down to your truth, right?
Yeah.
Your truth, your journey, your self-acceptance, being in your body, being with your feelings. Yeah. Because I mean, that's what you're here for. That's what we're literally all here for.
Yeah.
To be ourselves. To be ourselves. And we're not doing anybody, let alone ourselves or the world, any favors if we're being anyone other than who we actually are, who we truly feel we want to be.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is like, if you really sit and meditate about it, I think that is why we have like all these climate issues, like we're just taking and taking and taking from Earth. We're in that go, go, go energy, like what you were sharing about the go, go, go and hustle mode. I think that it like zooming out to the collective of humanity, I feel like everyone could benefit from connecting with feminine energy. Like even men have feminine energy, and I think men are very much suffering from not being able to fully express that. And
absolutely.
I think as we're kind of in this space right now where more women are being empowered in their feminine energy.
Yeah.
I think I've said this in an episode before, but I think that we'll be able to kind of like usher the men into that as well.
Yeah.
I
feel
kind of like a collective mother.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, Earth is the mother, right? Like the ultimate
and look
mother,
what we're
like
doing
Mother
to
Earth.
her.
And look what we're doing. And Earth is is an example more of a feminine energy, right? Like a nurturing, creative energy that births life, literally births life constantly, right? Like that's very feminine. And it's true what you're saying. There's masculine, feminine in everyone. Absolutely.
Yeah, and we need both. Like
and
with
we need
Earth,
both.
you can't just grow a tree with Earth and no sunlight, which sunlight
That's
is
right.
considered like the masculine energy, and like it just does. And you can't grow stuff just with sunlight, and like both is needed.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that analogy is beautiful. Both
it just
is needed.
came to me.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's like the grandparents from earlier with the politicians. Like that totally just like downloaded.
I love it.
Love those moments. Yeah. So the way that I have experienced this and the way that I see it is everything is one thing ultimately, right? Consciousness, love, energy, God, whatever you want to call it. This is from I've literally experienced myself as this. So I'm speaking from like personal experience.
Ooh.
So we are all this, all of it, like we're all one. So we're not separate. Essentially, like that the separateness is kind of an illusion, but it's
Mm-hmm.
still real at the same time in this reality because we need to experience ourselves here, right? That's a whole other podcast episode that I would love to do one day with you, Celia.
Yeah,
That's so
let's do
much
it.
fun. Yeah.
Let's do it.
But so you have the oneness. And then you've got the duality, the polarity, and what is that? Masculine, feminine energy, ultimately, right? So, and that
Mhm.
expresses itself in different ways, but it's also present in everything, right? So,
Mhm.
and we need the balance because look at how the world has been for so long. It's been very imbalanced. It's been very,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
masculine,
Yeah.
extremely. And as a result, we've had all this destruction of the earth, all this
Mhm.
oppression of women, you know, and other things too. But men have definitely been suffering as a result as well because the
Yeah.
feminine is part of who they are, and if they're the ones
Yeah.
if the masculine is abusing the feminine, they're also abusing it within themselves.
Yeah, for
They
sure.
all come from a mother as well, right? I mean, there's so
Yeah.
many symbols here, so many things I can like
Mhm.
say, but they have been suffering too because when you're abusing one, you're abusing the all, you know,
Yeah,
in
for
this
sure.
concept of oneness.
Mhm.
So everyone's been suffering, and it's really, really important that the feminine, you know, rises now. You know, it's rising, it's being remembered. We're getting into that empowerment of the feminine, and with that we're bringing the masculine along beside us,
Mhm.
you know, to be together, to interweave, because it's not like we're supposed to be like the reigning women now that are gonna, you know, because then we're just doing the same thing that the patriarchy did, right? Essentially.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
for
it's
sure.
coming together and healing together those wounds. And I think women are also initiators largely, right?
Mm.
Initiating
Mhm.
movements, initiating each other,
We birth.
initiating the masculine. We birth, exactly,
Yeah.
initiating the men. And it's really beautiful to see more and more of that now, you know, like in these conscious spaces as well, where men are rising up too, and they're honoring the feminine, they're honoring women, they're loving women, and ultimately, I truly believe that most people are good. They have good
Yeah.
intentions. We want the same things, you
Mhm.
know, and the truth is, yes, there's toxic masculinity for sure, but there's also toxic femininity, right?
Yeah.
Like, and we
Mhm.
need to like accept that there's sort of like the dark and the light to everything,
Yeah.
right? And then we can choose where we focus our attention, what we give our time to, what we actually do. So,
Mhm.
and I think that's important to remember, and then focus on, okay, there are these dark aspects, you know, of femininity, of masculinity, of other parts of ourselves, but there's so much love, there's so much good intention, there's so many beautiful things in the world as well. And often I feel like we forget that because we get drowned in, like, first of all, our own issues, you know, life things that happen that might be difficult, and also all the things that happen in the world that are really atrocious.
Mhm.
But it's just a reflection of the wounds that we have within
Yeah.
ourselves, you
Mm.
know, our own traumas. It can go
Mm.
back generations and
Yeah.
ancestors and past lives. I mean, so much. So yes, it's
Mhm.
a lot. It's a lot, you know. It's a time right now that we're at where it's a lot, for sure. I mean, maybe it's always been a lot, but I feel
Yeah.
like we're feeling it all very, very deeply now more than possibly ever because we're also so interconnected, right? Like because of technology.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but yeah, it's love ultimately. Ultimately, we just all want to come back to love,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
That's beautiful.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I feel like there's so many, like, yeah, like I said before, there's so many paths I could take now. Like,
Yeah, right. Me too. I
yeah, there's so
also
many
like
things to talk about.
I also like wrote down because we said in the beginning we were talking briefly about pleasure and how it's not just
Mm,
sex. I
yeah.
also wrote down Tantra is also not just about sex. And it's often like presented as
Oh,
that.
yeah.
And I
Mm-hmm.
think maybe it's presented in that way so that people stay away from Tantra because Tantra, like
Ooh.
from the
Mm-hmm.
little knowledge I have of it,
Yeah.
I'm currently in a coaching certification that's very Tantra based.
Amazing.
But from my perspective so far, I just see Tantra as like truth,
Yeah.
truth, and you're just
Yeah.
accepting all sides of truth. sadness, happiness, depression, bliss, like all of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they don't want us to know the truth. Whoever they is, I don't know
who are they? Yeah. Yes, this is something that I've talked about a lot as well, because there's so many misconceptions about Tantra.
Yeah.
So, mostly, again, like similar to the pleasure, like everybody thinks it's just about sex. Tantra is a way of being. Okay, it is a way of being that is all inclusive. So it's accepting yourself, like you said, all of your emotions, everything is okay. Not in the sense that you can go and hurt somebody or there's no consent. Tantra is very much about consent and about boundaries as well, being very clear and open and transparent. So as long as you're not hurting anybody, then ultimately everything is okay and it's all divine. And of course, sex is a really big part of that because it's a really big part of who we are. It's a big part of our nature. And so you then also understand the sacredness of sex.
Yeah.
And how you can connect very deeply with your sexual energy within yourself and with a partner. You make it conscious because a lot of sexual energy has been made very like mechanical nowadays. Like not just nowadays, for a while now, it's been like very mechanical. Like either it's been like, okay, it's just for biological purposes, like procreation, right? Like just that. Or it's like, a man having his way with a woman, just like pounding. And that is not how most women enjoy sex. And also that is very surface level in the sense that you're not actually experiencing it fully at all.
Yeah.
Right. So with Tantra and sexual energy, it opens up this doorway into so much more depth, so much more connection, so much more intimacy, so much more bliss and pleasure. You can like cry tears of joy. You can experience God. Like, I mean, it's literally like it's so full on and it's beautiful. But how does it start? It's not like you're like, okay, I'm doing Tantra now and I'm going to go have all this awesome sex. Like, I'm going to try out all these different things. Like, no, it starts with yourself, with self-acceptance, self-awareness, with being in your body, with feeling your emotions. So when I work with people, for instance, I start out with saying, okay, like just go look at yourself in the mirror for a while. Like start taking your clothes off. And this can be incredibly difficult for people, but just be with yourself there. Like what comes up for you? Like what are you feeling? Just as you're being there with yourself. People don't do this. It's very confronting, right? Because often we have these judgments about ourselves and it's understandable completely. But it's like, that's how you start creating intimacy, is with yourself, with your emotions, with your body, being very present and then releasing slowly, bit by bit, that criticism and that judgment, right? So, and of course, there's layers then that you're peeling back because all sorts of things can come up for you, from your childhood, from certain experiences. I mean, and that's what we then work through. But it's not 101 kinky sex positions. That's not what Tantra is about.
I used to think Tantra practitioners were people who just like had orgies all the time. Like back when I was like younger and like first heard about it. But
I mean,
the mirror work is very powerful.
It's very powerful. There's definitely, there's a lot of like when you get to the state of being very, like liberated in your sexual energy, then a lot of people can go down these very explorative, I don't know if I'm saying that word right, exploratory paths. Where there could be an orgy involved for some people that want to experience that, right? Like that definitely exists. There's definitely that world within Tantra where there are multiple people involved, multiple sexual experiences, always with consent, like, there's some, obviously there's like what I said earlier, there's darkness to everything. So there can also be some people that are doing things that are just, they're taking advantage, right? You have to be careful. Like you have to discern that definitely does exist.
That's why the starting with yourself is important. Because like we said, I think we said this earlier in the call, like someone who's liberated and like in their own power, you can't make them do something they don't want to do.
Exactly. Yeah. And they have the awareness around that as well, right? So you're in your power then, in your sovereignty. But so it's something to be aware of, that does exist. And there's some, teachers that focus more on the sexual aspects of Tantra. There's some teachers like myself, I focus more on, the going inwards. The sexual energy, of course, is a big part of it, but I put a lot of emphasis on the things that are not essentially sexual about Tantra, right? It's like your whole life is tantric. Your whole life is divine. It's all included, right? So Tantra is the truth of you, of your wholeness, right? So, and then you start to explore your sexual energy in a way that is healthy, in a way that's conscious and connected. And you can really come into this beautiful, liberated place where you can begin to feel possibly in ways you've never felt before, never even thought were possible to feel. And it's incredible, right? That's why I really resonate very much with Tantra, because it has that power to do that. You know, I've seen it within myself. I've seen it within people when I did my Tantra teacher training in Bali, you know, like I was watching people like have transformations. Like it's incredible. It's really powerful. And I think it's true what you're saying as well. It's like keeping people away from it, you know, like the truth, you know, you don't want people to know the truth because then they're empowered. And I think that does scare some people, you know, the mystery around it. I think it's both. So I think some people are drawn to Tantra because it's mysterious and intriguing, and also they want to go just for the sexual things because I think that's what it is. And then other people that are like, ooh, like they're like they don't want to go there because it's like, oh, you know, sexual energy and mystery, like I don't know, like that's scary or it's confronting. So you kind of have like both of those. But I feel like more and more now it's kind of coming into the present awareness and collective consciousness where people are starting to understand like what it really is about. And it's been around for a long time, which means there's got to be something to it.
It's like
it's
ancient.
Ancient, literally ancient.
And like let's just take a moment to be like grateful for like all those people that kept it alive. Like it could have died.
Yes, it could have. Yeah.
And it's still here.
Sure.
That's incredible. Like
it is.
All of the wars and all of the things that happened in humanity, it survived all of that. That's awesome.
It is actually really amazing. I mean, literally thousands of years. We don't know the exact time of origin, but that is amazing because that's a long time and there's a lot of things that have happened. And and you're right. Like it's incredible when you think about it for a moment. And I do have a lot of gratitude, you know, for that. And in my own life, I can briefly mention this as well. Bunch of years ago, you know, I was exploring different modalities and doing my own like inner growth and, you know, different meditations and all these things. And I'm still a huge fan of meditations, but I then discovered Tantra and it was like, wow, like this is like, how come nobody ever told me about this before? You know, like why is this not more in the open or talked about? Because it is so powerful. And I think that's also why it's kind of been almost shunned by some other modalities because it's so inclusive, because it includes the sexual energy. So it's you know,
because
you know what
like
I mean?
Like for me, I was trained in yoga, and there's I don't know if it was a yama or a niyama, but there was one about celibacy, and you know how like you got to be godlike and don't have sex. And for me, also, I had a similar experience. I didn't know I was getting into Tantra, but I got into a yoni egg course in 2021.
Cool. Yeah.
And it was so uncomfortable, but I, you know, listened to the teacher, who's the teacher I'm training with now, to just like, if you feel uncomfortable, just stop and just listen to the video, listen to the audio, or do the practice for 5 minutes, or just hold yourself with whatever you're feeling, but come to it, you know, devote yourself, come to it, but you don't have to do anything. And eventually I got to a space where I was just like, this is what sex is? What? Like we're all being lied to. And like it's just like so beautiful. And so it felt very much like an initiation of like slowly inching me towards someone who's going to be a sexuality coach, which still terrifies me a little bit. But I do that now kind of in a, I guess, introductory way with, I have a breast massage course, and we do have I do have a practice in there where I have them just look at your breasts in the mirror, and like, if you can, take your shirt off. If not, you know, still look at them, but like be there with the mirror. And
yeah, that's beautiful and so powerful. I really felt that when you said all those things. Our journeys are amazing and so important. And we don't allow ourselves often enough to really just be with ourselves, really just explore
Yeah.
ourselves,
Yeah. The
you
go, go,
know?
go
It's the
hustle
go, it's the
culture doesn't give
hustle.
space for that.
It doesn't give space for that,
Hmm.
exactly. And we need to just like slow down, and like we're constantly being distracted. I think for almost basically designed that way, you know, to like keep us
Yeah.
from our own empowerment,
So
from
that we
our
buy more
own,
stuff.
so that we buy more stuff because we're told that's what makes us happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's all already within us, and it's all
Yeah.
available within us. And yes, it's scary and it can be uncomfortable to go there for multiple different reasons, which are all totally valid. But
Hmm.
if you want to like transcend and go to that next level, so to speak, within yourself, you know, to be able to like feel more, experience more, because I think most of us do have that desire to be able to go deeper because of the
Hmm.
beautiful things you can experience. But then it's like you've got to go through your comfort zone. You got to like break out of the
Yeah.
comfort zone, like, you know, go like beyond. And
Yeah.
Tantra has a beautiful way of doing that. Going, you know, with your body and with your feelings, and really just accepting yourself where you're at right here and now, I think is also really important, you know, because a lot of the times we can look back and be like, oh, I wish I would have done it this way, or why didn't I, you know, realize it earlier, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that was all part of your journey. Every single step
Yeah.
that you took got you to where you are now. You know, you needed to go through all the things you went through.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and in my journey, it's definitely very obvious, you know, like that. And sometimes you can't see it in the moment. You know, when you're really in
Yeah.
it, it's hard to
Yeah.
see. It's like there's the fog, but then
Yeah.
later you're like, oh yeah, of course, that made so much
Yeah.
sense, and thank goodness for that. You know, you can be grateful as well. But yeah, it's very much, Tantra is very much about like de-armoring yourself as well, like just
Mm-hmm.
opening your heart. You know, it's all about heart energy, sexual energy, like the connection of that. And what you were saying too, like, you know, the celibacy thing, there can be a place for celibacy, like,
Oh,
you
yeah,
know, there's
for
definitely
sure.
like a place
Uh-huh.
for that at certain times in your life. That can be very useful, you
Mm-hmm.
know, there's all sorts of reasons why that can be good. But
Yeah.
I am definitely not, I mean, and if you want to be a celibate all your life, that's okay, of course, like if that's
Mm-hmm.
truly what you desire, right? And that's the experience for some people. But the whole experience of humanity, all of it is divine. It's all supposed to be felt and experienced.
Yeah.
Whatever you as a person are choosing to experience, all of it is holy, is divine, and none of it should be shamed or
Yeah, and if everyone was
repressed.
celibate, there'd be no more humans eventually.
Exactly. That too. Yeah. It's like there is no one way to do it. There is no one way to do it. It's like there's your way and there's your way and there's this way and that way, and you get to pick and choose. And one moment you'll want to try this, and the next moment maybe this is better for you, you know? You come to
Mm-hmm.
these like revelations within yourself, but it doesn't make you a bad person if you like having sex.
Yeah.
No. So it, sexual energy is beautiful, you know, it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that we embrace that, and the more that we embrace every part of who we are, the better we'll feel, and the more beautiful of a world we can create. Because ultimately, I think that's what we want. We want a world where people can be loved and accepted, and I mean, world peace. Isn't that what they always say? Like,
Yeah.
you know, like
Yeah.
it sounds like maybe cliche or whatever. And maybe we'll never be in a place that's like completely peaceful, and that's fine too, because we need some contrasts. But to create a more wholesome, loving, joyful world, I completely believe we're capable of that. I certainly hope that that's where we're going. I feel like, you know, maybe I won't
Yeah.
see it in my lifetime, but I feel like I'm contributing to it, you know, like that's what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we can live in a world that is really beautiful, like truly. It doesn't need to be utopia, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but it can be really loving predominantly. And I think that's also our human nature. Like I do not believe that we're some sort of greedy, animalistic, you know, power hungry beings at our core,
No, we
because
learned that.
yeah, we're
Yeah.
compassionate, we're
Yeah,
loving, we want to share, we want to
for
give.
sure.
That's who we truly are. And I'm not going to get into Darwin now, but I'll briefly mention, I don't know if you know this, I didn't know this for a long time, but Darwin, with all his writings, he only mentioned survival of the fittest like, I don't know, 5 times. He talked about love like over 90 times.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
and they were just like, oh, that's not convenient for us. We're just going to talk about the survival of the fittest. We'll just
Wow.
ignore the love. But
Yeah.
no, it's the cooperation, it's the love, it's the giving, it's the sharing, the compassion. I mean, you talk to anybody and most people will say they just want to live a happy, fulfilling life where they have enough for themselves and their families, where they're having a good time most of the time. Like,
Yeah.
right? Like, we all want those things. So we can do it. Yeah, I believe in us.
We could do it.
Yes. I'm an optimist. What can I say?
Yeah. I feel like we're gonna
Yeah.
have to do a part 2.
Yes. Yes.
So these questions will probably lead to like us having, you know, a conversation in between the questions, and that's totally
Okay.
welcome.
Beautiful.
So what's the first question I usually ask? I don't remember now. It's been you're the first person I've interviewed since November.
Oh, it's been a while. Yes. Oh, and
Yeah,
it's so special.
I took a little podcast break. So the first question. Oh,
I
did
was
you
going
want
to
to say
say,
something?
I've listened to some of your episodes, and one of the things I remember you asking was like something about self-love, like
Oh
meaning
yeah, that's
something.
the first one. What does
Okay.
self-love mean to you? Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Oh, what does self-love mean to me? I would say unapologetic self-expression is a big part of self-love. When you can fully accept yourself here and now, when you know that you're already worthy, that you are good enough simply for existing, when you don't need so much outer validation for yourself, like, you know, you're really grounded. You can look in the mirror and genuinely love yourself. And that, I know that's hard, and I know that's a journey.
Yeah.
And maybe it won't be constant, or maybe it won't be every day, but you can feel it. You can feel love within yourself for yourself, and you know that it's within you. Like, you don't need to go outside of yourself for it. Like, it's there within you, within yourself, as yourself. It's like that's who you actually are at your core, is love. And like the recognition of that. I think that's what self-love means to me. Yeah.
I love that. I love how it's like from this place of like self-sourced, of like
Self-sourced. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Self-sourced sounds really good. That's good. Oh, that's good. I like that. That can be like a slogan or a catchphrase or something. Self-love, self-sourced, or self-sourced, self-love. Yeah. Yeah. We are source and we are love.
Yeah.
Feels really good. Yeah.
So then the next question I usually ask is, what makes you feel the most grounded?
Oh, the most grounded. I would say the number one thing for me, aside from being in my own emotions and in my own body, which is very grounding and very important, is connecting with nature, with Mother Earth directly. Because I mean, that's so grounded, isn't it? It's like you're on the sand, you're on the soil, you're touching a tree. And then I really feel so energized, rejuvenated, that direct energy that, I mean, that's even called grounding, isn't it? Grounding or earthing, like when you walk barefoot on the earth. Just that direct connection and that direct contact, that is very grounding for me. Yeah. And I just love it. I've always been a total earth child. Like, I would grow up and just like play in the trees and, you know, talk to the birds, like all of it. Yeah. It's awesome. If I have children, I want them to grow up like that. Ideally.
Yeah. I know, right? I'm always telling my husband, like, we need to move close to the woods.
Yes. It's such a beautiful way to grow up. And I think also you then gain an appreciation and a love for nature, right? Like, because you're directly connected with it, you're interacting with it, and you realize, maybe you don't realize, but maybe you do eventually, that you're not separate. It's like you actually are it, like, and it is you, like you're part of it, like you're one thing. Like, I really believe, this is going in a whole other direction, but I actually believe that like all of us are cells of the earth. That the earth is like this massive being, right? And
we
that
are
we're
really
all
tiny if you zoom out for the whole.
Yeah,
so
and that
trippy
we're
to think
all
about.
cells of the earth. Like, I really think that, because like if you just look at it for a second, like, okay, so I've flown over like massive ice fields, like up north in Canada. And, you know, you see like a little bit of the melting water in the streams or even rivers, right? It's like, it's like the blood. It's like our veins. But you see it like represented in the macro and the micro everywhere. I mean, like, I suppose the shape of a galaxy is like our DNA. It's literally everywhere. It's reflected, you know, like your eyes look like what, like an orange or something opened up or something, like, or a kiwi, like it's everywhere.
Oh yeah, they look like
it's
kiwis.
Everywhere. Yeah, they're so
They
good.
do look like kiwis. I never thought of that.
Yeah, like, and kidney beans, they look like your kidney. I mean, they're even called kidney beans. It's so obvious. If you look at a walnut, it's like, that's your brain.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, I feel like it's everywhere there's that representation. And you can even go as far as saying, like, okay, the water is the blood. The volcanoes, the fire, the core of the earth, that's fire. That's your own energy, your own, like, desires and things like that, right? Like your own warmth and fire. You've got the earth itself, like stones, rocks, like your bones, your skin, like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, this fascinates me. Like, I really honestly believe that we are actually the cells of the earth and that we're all one thing. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. Thanks for sharing that. I could have a whole conversation with you about that, honestly.
Yeah, let's do it. Seriously, it'd be so fun.
I wanted to ask you if you've read Women Who Run with the Wolves.
Yes, I have.
Do you remember the very first, I don't know if it's the first chapter or like the introduction where they're talking about, you know, being out in the forest and smelling the soil. And so, I remember it because when I was reading it, I was like imagining, you know, being a little girl in the woods and like the smell. I thought of that when you were talking about growing up near like the woods.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I think it's been a while since I've read it, but I do vaguely remember, and I think it may have been in the very beginning. But yeah, totally.
Like, I want to read that book again. I feel like that's a book I want to constantly be reading.
Yeah, it's amazing. There's another book that I think you would love as well. Maybe you've read it. It's called Woman Be Wild by Indigo.
Ooh, no.
Very good. Yeah, definitely. I recommend it. It's amazing. Yeah, if you liked the other book, then you like this one, I think. It's really good.
I also loved what you shared earlier about doing a pleasure first list.
Yes.
I'm going to do that.
So good.
Very good tips you're given today.
Thank you.
So, there's one more question I ask, which I don't remember, but I remember my very last question because it's my favorite one. And it's, what's your favorite part about being a woman?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh gosh, I feel like there's a lot there. Okay, let's think about it for a moment here. Favorite part about being a woman. Sorry if that was a loud sound. I don't know if you heard that. My ability to feel very deeply, because I feel like women in particular feel very deeply. I mean, everybody does, of course, but I just feel like possibly women extra so. So just the depth of my own emotions. Maybe that's just me personally. Maybe that's not necessarily being a woman, but I feel like it's connected. So I'll go with that. And my power of creation, of being able to actually create life, I think that's very cool. That's pretty amazing. That is, you know, like very much being a woman. To be nurturing, like that, these different aspects of myself that I feel very deeply, of like that's connected with the feminine energy, I feel. And I think my sensuality, like I feel like I'm very sensual. I have the ability to be very sensual when I'm really embodied in that feeling, the way that I move through the world. I suppose maybe even the way some people perceive me in that essence or in that energy, like it feels really true to me. And I feel like, you know, because I'm a woman, I can feel that way and be that way very deeply and very truthfully and very connected. Yeah, I think that's what I love the most about being a woman. I do also, I mean, in this lifetime at least, I love my long blonde hair. You know, I can, yeah, but
She's been like asking for my attention all morning because I had a call at 8 and then I have had this call and she's been like, meow.
She's so gorgeous. Hello, you.
What do you have to say for yourself?
Yeah.
That'd be so cute if she meowed.
That would be adorable. I think there's a lot we can learn from animals, from cats in particular as well. They're like total Zen masters, hey? Like absolute Zen masters, like in the present moment.
Yeah. I always say that I feel like my cat helped initiate me to have a feminine awakening, divine feminine awakening, because we got her in 2020. We actually found her. And just observing how she rests a lot, takes a lot of breaks, and does her little self-care, washing her face, and she also very much like speaks out for what she desires and wants. Like she'll meow to high heaven if she wants something.
Yeah.
That's how we found her. She was meowing inside of a car engine.
Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. We had just moved to where we're at now. And it was the first day we were moving everything in, and then at noon we were like both starving, hadn't eaten breakfast yet. Like, let's go to the Whole Foods down the street. And we're there in the parking lot and we hear meowing, and it's coming out of a car engine. So we go into the Whole Foods and like, have them say the license plate and the intercom. And we pulled her out. She wasn't injured. She was just very dirty. And she was like this small. She was like 1 month old.
Oh my gosh.
And that was like her second birth.
Wow, no
Being
kidding.
pulled out of the car. And we took her home with the intention of like, training her and finding her family. But after like 2 days, I was like, nah, she's my cat. She's meant to be.
I was about to say, like, they get you. They will own you.
Yeah, I'm like, we can't give her. We can't give her to anyone.
No,
she's our she's our child.
Exactly. You get attached to them, and they give so much love and joy, And it's almost like when you said, like, we found her, what came to me immediately was like, well, she found you as well, right? Like it went both ways. And then she's now helped you in your journey. And I think, oh gosh, you've saved her, and in some small way she helped save you too, right? So that's really beautiful.
We love her.
Yeah.
So for everyone tuning in to this episode, where can they find your work? Where can they find out more about you? And if there's anything that you wanted to share for me to like put in the show notes, like a link to something, feel free to share that right now.
Awesome. Okay, well, you can find me on Instagram at laura.isabella.machny. I'm also on Facebook, same name, not the dots though, but you'll find me. Everything's connected online, like it filters into the next thing, or flows into the next thing. I've got my website, lauraisabellabyauthentic.com. You can send me a message. I'd love to hear from anybody. If you resonate, it's always nice to hear and connect. And I've got things going on, so you can follow me there. At the moment, I've got some beautiful sessions available for some wild women that want to go deeper into their own sexual energy, into pleasure, into their bodies. Got that going on. And also I'm going to be offering something for couples again soon as well. Nice. So that will be fun. So I've always got things happening, in my stories and stuff. So you can definitely find me there and follow me and connect with me. And I'm always happy to say hello and have a conversation.
Awesome. Oh, this was such a nice episode. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Openly Spoken. I know that there's an abundance of content online, so I really appreciate you giving me your ears today. If this episode shifted something for you, please share this with a friend or write us a podcast review if you're listening to this on iTunes so that more people can find this. If anything shifted for you from this episode that you want to have a conversation about, I would love to hear from you. Just send me a DM over on Instagram at selfexpressbabe, and that is in the show notes. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.